Hey, friends, welcome back to the Energy Matters podcast. We are here with Kute Blackson. Kute, is such a pleasure to have you, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and congrats on the new book. It looks absolutely fantastic. The Magic of Surrender. It just came out as we're recording this. So big congrats. And you have another book, You Are the One, which is absolutely fantastic. And me and Cody have been super excited to speak to you. So welcome. How are you doing? How is the life of a motivational speaker and coach and inspirer? The first question I really had for you, I've been thinking about all morning, is what is it like being a motivational speaker and your life force is about uplifting people? What is that like from your perspective?
Well, first I'll just say I don't necessarily consider myself a motivational speaker, although I'm very motivating.
You are.
It's more of a transformational teacher, because what I really do is I uncoach people, I unteach people, I untrain people, I uncondition people from the patterns of conditioning that we developed over time, often from childhood, out of survival, to function, to avoid pain, to get love, to be approved, to fit in. And so we often sort of end up wrapped inside of a limited prison or identity of persona or role or mask, or that becomes an ego identity that tends to limit our full expression. So the work I really do is a transformative unconditioning process, but I do it in a very hopefully inspiring and motivated way. What is the life like? Very interesting, never a dull moment. Because, I think to inspire people, at least in the way I'm guided to, and to really transform people in the way that I'm moved to in a very deep way, as a coach, as a teacher, as a guide, as a healer, for those listening, I think you can only transform people to the level and the depth of your own transformation. You can only truly take people, you can't take people beyond where you've gone yourself. And so as a facilitator, as a transformational teacher, in my everyday life, in my private life, in my relationships, in every area of my life, and I'm not talking about being on stage and doing podcasts and making videos, just everyday life. I'm really always in a quest to evolve, to grow, to transform myself, to expand, to release, to let go, to deepen into the most authentic expression of what's seeking to happen. And so maybe, and this is just a maybe, no better or worse, maybe if I was just selling cars, or had a restaurant or what have you, and my business, you could say, wasn't transforming people's lives, maybe I wouldn't have to go as deep as I've gone, right? And so for me, I think there's a responsibility as a coach, teacher, leader, transformational agent, to be constantly taking myself and stretching myself to the edges of my own consciousness, and expanding myself and opening and evolving. And so the life is very growth filled, really growth filled. I always say, if you write a book on surrender, or whatever the book you write a book on surrender, you better be freaking practicing surrender in a big way, because you can't just write a book about surrender and not really be pushing the edges and the limits and the different dimensions and nuances of surrender. And so even the last year has been incredibly beautiful and deeply, shall we say, growth filled. So never a dull moment.
I'm glad to hear that. Why a book on surrender and letting go? The subtitle is...
This wasn't, The Magic of Surrender is not the book I thought I was going to write. I actually had a whole bunch of ideas. When I sat down I felt a book seeking to happen. But when I sat down one day, brainstorming a bunch of ideas for books. I had all sorts of topics and all sorts of titles, and I thought, well, that would sell, and people would love that, and publishers would love this concept, and that would be a great marketing angle, and I had all these sexy ideas, and literally one day, I'll never forget this. It was like the soul of the book just came down and just revealed itself. And it was undeniable. It was unexpected. It was so profound and powerful. Just boom. This is what the book is. It's about surrender, clear as day. I was shocked. I was surprised. Yet I was also surprised by how obvious it was. Like, of course, but can it be that obvious? And there was a part of me that kind of resisted it, because I wanted to write another kind of book. And so there was the book I wanted to write. Then there was the book that was seeking to be written and seeking to happen. And I had to surrender to that. And in the surrender of that, there was a real realization that my job was not to write the book, but my job was to be the vessel, the vehicle to serve the soul and the spirit and the expression of what the book that was seeking to be written was. And that was the beginning. And then everything flowed. The title flowed, everything started flowing, the structure, the thoughts, the ideas, the stories. But the book also, I think the seed of the book for me was planted in 2016. I didn't realize it was planted. My mother, at the end of 2016, I was on a high traveling, promoting my first book, You Are the One. And I got a phone call from my father. And my father basically tells me, you need to call your mother. And I call my mother. She tells me she has stomach cancer. She's diagnosed with stomach cancer. My mother is the closest person to me on the planet, the person I love the most, closest friend in a certain way. And I was devastated. And so I started to fly back and forth from Los Angeles to London every month to be with my mother in her chemo sessions, to sit with her, to be with her, to take care of her. I remember during the first week I went there, I went with every intention to fix her, to heal her, to keep her alive, my health protocols, my healing practices, and I'm going to keep my mother alive. And probably in the first month, I realized that no matter what I do, she's going to die. And it was pretty clear. And it was a devastating moment, realization of realizing that the woman I love is going to die, my mother's going to die, and also very humbling to feel that I'm not in control. I'm not in control of her life. Nothing I do is going to make a difference. Like, I really am not in control. So that was a beautiful process of surrender. Through that process of surrender, it freed me up to stop resisting in any way and to really be fully present with her, loving her, knowing that every single moment could be the last moment. And then, so during that year, about 6 months into it, the doctors really then confirmed there's nothing we can do. It could be days, it could be weeks, it could be it could be months, but definitely not years till your life is over. So get your affairs in order. I look at my mother. I'll never forget. I looked at her, and we were sitting in the car, and I looked her in the eyes, and I said, "Are you afraid? Are you afraid of dying?" And, it's one thing to understand that we're infinite and we're consciousness, but when you're faced with your mortality, and she looked at me and she said, "I'm not afraid of dying because I know I'm not this body. I'm a soul. I'm an infinite, eternal spirit. And this body is just a vehicle in this lifetime. So I'm not going to die." And she was completely at peace. And I saw the strength in this little woman's eyes. And then I said to her, "Is there anything I can do for you that would make your life easier in your last days? What do you need? What do you want?" And she said, "There's nothing I want. All I want," and this is the moment I think the seed for the book was planted. She said, "All I want for my life is what God wants for my life. Nothing else." And it was such a simple statement, not even in a religious sense. It was just, for me, spiritually very deep. And what I really got from it was, she wasn't attached to living. She wasn't attached to dying. She was truly surrendered, to the highest unfolding of her soul's journey. There was no attachment. And in that true surrender, she was free for the entire year. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. She didn't feel like a victim. She didn't get angry. She was completely at peace and surrendered. And when I looked at my mother's life and how she lived her life, here was a Japanese woman who married an African guy, sight unseen, never spoke to him, didn't speak English, never met him, hadn't seen a picture of him, married him, like literally having never seen the guy, met the guy. Her entire life was about surrender. And I saw that was her greatness. And when she passed, I reflected on my mother, I reflected on my father, I reflected on many of the great ones, those we consider great, whether it's Jesus, whether it's Buddha, whether it's Gandhi, whether it's Mother Teresa, whether it's Mandela. And I really felt their spirits. And I felt like what makes them great is not because they're the richest or they're the sexiest or they're the most handsome or they're the most intelligent, but at some point they all got to a point where they chose to surrender. They had to surrender themselves to life, to something bigger than themselves, a bigger purpose, a bigger vision, and to really allow that vision to express through them and live them and use them and manifest through them. And what life was able to do through these human beings was truly great, truly powerful, move mountains. And I think surrender is the key. So like there's something to this thing of surrender. It's the key, and we often think that surrender, and I started reflecting, like surrender doesn't always have the best rap or reputation, right? And we often think surrender is passive, surrender is weak, surrender means maybe you get taken advantage of, surrender means maybe you won't manifest your goals or dreams or desires. But I think I started feeling into, if surrender is truly the key to the great ones that unlocked the potential of the universe moving through them, something bigger than they could imagine for themselves. What if through surrendering, you actually got more, more, it may not be the more that you expect, but you actually got more love, more joy, more purpose, more vision, more wisdom, more than you could currently imagine with your own limited, human personality, ego, consciousness. And so to me, surrender is just being available. Surrender is being open. Surrender is trusting life. Surrender is the willingness to stop trying to control and manipulate and force life into a little idea of what we think it should be based on our limited concept, limited perception. And it's the willingness, I think, to let go of the idea of the life we think we should have so that we can open to the life that is seeking to happen. And so that was sort of the inspiration for surrender.
That's beautiful. And before I let Cody ask a question, just one follow-up with that. Were you there when your mom passed?
It's so interesting. I got to be with my mother during the entire year. And then it became clear that she was passing. My father, and they were still together, but he was pretty much living in Ghana at the time. My mother was in London, taking care of my father's church. My father had 300 churches in Ghana, a huge church in London. And so she was taking care of the church. And my father had some health complications, so he couldn't come back to London. And so I decided I was going to move my mother to be with my father, that they could spend their last days together. And so she was in Ghana. This was like July of 2017. She was in Ghana and being with my father. I dropped her off. I left. And one day, a few months later, out of the blue, I thought she was getting better. And one day, my spirit said, talk about surrender, my spirit said, I need to go see my mother. I didn't think she was going to go, but I went to see her and I could tell something was a bit off, but it wasn't clear. And I remember on that journey, it was in September 2017, I saw her and I held her hand. And, one night while she was in between sleep state, I whispered into her ear, not thinking anything was going to happen, but just, I whispered into my mother's ear, if you need to go, I give you full permission. I give you full permission to go. I'm going to be fine. I'm here. But I'm kind of thinking she's still going to be around, but I just wanted to give her full permission. And I've been letting her go with the hope too that she would be around. And I left the next day back to Los Angeles. The day I arrived back into LA, I got a phone call from my cousin. And my cousin says, your mother has stopped responding. She's just lying on the bed. She's simply chanting a a one-word mantra in Japanese. My mother's Japanese, so she's chanting this word over and over again. Her eyes are closed. She's chanting this word. It's almost been like 17, 18 hours. For 24 hours, she was chanting this word over and over again. They put the phone to my ear. I couldn't even make out what it was, but it was like her soul was preparing her for a transition. And then literally that day I walked into a smoothie store. I heard a song. I think it's by Sting, you know, Every Breath You Take, I'll Be Watching You. I just knew my mother's about to go. It was like a message from her spirit. That song was a message. And that night around 2 a.m. LA time, I get a phone call that my mother passed away. And it was, I'd been preparing for it, but it was a very deep moment, you know, of another level of letting go and surrendering. But I really felt like she didn't want me to be there in the physical in that final moment. And I went on a whole nother journey, you know. It was through, it's interesting, it was through the part, her death, that I actually became closer to her. It was almost as though through her death, her physical body was no longer. And so I was no longer relating to an ego form personality structure. That the real essence of what she was, which is pure consciousness, pure energy, pure spirit, which is what I am, what she is, what we all are, where we are all interconnected. And at that level one, there was no more separation between me and her. The physical had dropped, and there was just the inherent recognition of the shared beingness that I just felt so profoundly, that the depth of love that I felt for her was so, shall we say, I could feel the depth of love she was, and I could feel the depth of love I was, because there was no body to separate that anymore, no physicality to separate that anymore. And the depth of love I had and felt for her and that she was so, so much, so deep, so expansive. It was, my heart couldn't contain it. You know, it was excruciatingly blissful that it would shatter my heart open with love and tears and gratitude and emotion and grief. And it was just profound, you know, profound to feel. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I just wanted to follow up for people listening going, wow, when somebody passed in my life, I was just a puddle, or I didn't handle it well, or I was full of regret or anger, you know, angry at life that they passed away too soon. What do you say to students?
Yeah.
How do you handle it?
You know, I remember when my mother was during the year that she was passing. I'm so glad I went to see her every month. From LA to London is not a short trip, you know, and I would go to see her every month, and it was a trek. And I have no regrets about that. You know, it was a very healing thing. But I remember sitting with my mother in chemo. We would sit in chemo for 10 hours, and I just hold her hand, and she was getting chemo treatment. And we would just talk about, honestly, nothing very profound. But I'll be honest, I remember feeling like, why did I have to wait until she was dying to spend this time just having a cup of tea with no goal and no plan and nowhere to go? Why did I have to wait till this moment to like really appreciate the mundane, the simplicity, the simple moments, you know? And so there was a lot of regret in a certain way in my heart. And for me, I allowed myself to be touched by that regret. There's something, I think, when you allow yourself to be touched by the regret, not to judge yourself, not to even hold on to the past, but to let the regret carve a space and a deeper opening of love, because it was through feeling the regret in my heart that I saw how precious life was. I saw how sacred life was. I saw how fragile and fleeting life is. And so many of the things that I had thought weren't important, so many of the things I didn't have time with to just be with my mother for a Christmas because I was, you know, chasing something, right? Put it all in perspective. And so even to this day, I carry let's call it a sacred regret. It's not a bad regret. It's a sacred regret that I actually want to keep, because I feel the urgency. I feel the reality of life, how fleeting it is, that we're all going to die, and it could happen like that any moment. And so that sacred regret has inspires me to really live life even more deeply, even more fully, even more wholeheartedly, to not waste any time. And so it feels like a beautiful regret, and so I would tell everyone, feel that regret, but don't turn it in on yourself. Feel that regret and turn it outwards to use that so that you can live without any regret. What would it be like to really live and love and speak and express without regret? How would you need to live? What would you need to say so that if death came, because it will come, the truth is we're all going to die. You, me, Jesus died. The great yogis in India died. Yogananda died. Mother Teresa died. Bruce Lee died. Muhammad Ali died. If they all died, you're going to die. I'm going to die. If they didn't make it out alive, we sure as hell aren't going to make it out alive, And I know there's folks talking about how, biohacking this, we're going to live forever. We're going to freaking die. That's the bottom line. This physical incarnation will go. Maybe we'll incarnate and then, into another avatar of something. But as us, we're going to die. And I think as human beings in our culture, we're obsessed with youth. We're obsessed with preservation of our self. And there is such an aversion and an avoidance of death. There's such an aversion. Oh my God, and so we don't want to die. And in avoiding death, we avoid life. Mm-hmm. Resisting death, we resist life. In not dealing with death, we don't deal with life. And so I would invite everyone to make peace with death. I would make everyone what I began doing through that process is surrendering to the fact that I'm going to die. Surrendering to the fact this body will die, this Kute identity label will expire at some point. It's going to happen. And so every day I endeavor to just feel my death, to breathe it, to feel it, to acknowledge it, to hold death close. Because if I can hold death close, not as a morbid thing, not even out of fear, but hold it close as a reality, because it is a reality that is unavoidable. If I hold it close, then it can act as a calibration, as a compass to like, you sure you want to waste time on that? You sure you want to hold on to that bullshit? Are you really sure you want to just like spend time spiraling, watching that thing? It's just what's real. It's a reminder. Death is a reminder of what's real. And so, look, I'm sure the folks in 9/11 or whatever disaster, natural disaster, fires, had no idea that maybe they weren't going to come home that night and look their loved ones in the eyes and say, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I screwed up. I'm sorry. I'm going to humble myself. I'm going to let go of my pride. This whole grudge situation. I'm waiting for you to be right. I'm waiting for you to apologize. I'm sorry. None of that really matters. When my mother died, none of the BS mattered. Nothing really mattered. I had some frustration with my father because of the way I didn't feel he showed up in certain ways. None of that was important at all. I made a decision, for instance, when my mother died, that I was going to call my father every single day. Every day for the rest of my life, while I'm alive, I will call him and I will devote myself to loving this man who wasn't really there for me as a kid, who didn't show up for me as a kid, who didn't speak to me as a kid, who was always gone. None of that mattered. Nothing mattered other than the loving. And it wasn't like, well, I'll do this if he's that. It's just, you know what? I love him. I love him. So let me just love him and offer that so that if I die and if he dies, I could be in peace. So what would we need to do and how would we need to live so that we can die in peace? What would we need to let go of? Who would we need to forgive? What would we need to express? In terms of the grief, just to wrap, I think it's so important that if someone dies or something ends, or the grieving is natural. And I think it's so important to allow, to honor and allow the grieving process. Grieving is sacred. So you see, to really open to surrender, and surrender, we'll call it the open-hearted participation with life and the process of what's happening in life, to really be able to open your heart to the difficult situation and say, I'm going to surrender and move through this. We have to allow the grieving, because surrender is a death. So between, let's say, acceptance and surrender, we think acceptance is sometimes surrender, but acceptance is not surrender. So to move from, let's say, acceptance to surrender, we have to allow the grieving. And when we allow the grieving, and honoring that something has died, and honoring of what something that has passed, to allow ourselves to feel the completion of a relationship, the end of a connection, the end of a dream, the end of an era, the end of a certain phase of our own internal spiritual, mental, emotional, psychological development is a death. And so I think when we don't allow ourselves to grieve, there's a part of our heart that is stuck in the past, and a part of our energy and heart that is not really available to the new love, the new relationship, the new possibility, because the part of us is still stuck there, our energy is still stuck there, part of us is blocked. And so I think we often don't allow ourselves to grieve fully because we're afraid that if we grieve, maybe it will last forever. We're afraid that if we grieve, we won't be able to cope. We're afraid. Sometimes there's a sneaky thing. We sometimes, it's often unconscious, don't fully allow ourselves to grieve, because if we don't, let's say someone dies. If I don't grieve my mother's death, then maybe I don't really have to acknowledge that she's gone. And there's a part of me that can hold on to the idea that she's here, and I can kind of stay in denial, and I don't have to really let go of her. And so sometimes not allowing the grieving is an unconscious way of holding on to the connection with the person. And so for me, the most powerful thing we can do to move through is to acknowledge the grief. The most powerful thing I did when my mother passed was to feel the grief. And the grief doesn't have a timetable. I think all feelings remain present until fully felt. And when we feel them, every feeling has its own natural cycle, has its own cycle, has its own rhythm. And when we feel them and we acknowledge them and we feel them consciously with awareness and allow that energy of the grief, even take the label off, allow the energy of the grief, allow the sensations of the grief to move through our system, to move through our body, then the cycle of the grief can dissolve. And so I just would tell everyone, no feeling lasts forever. Grief will happen in stages. Let it cycle through, and then breathe, and maybe there'll be another wave, and that too will pass, and then there'll be another one. But each time you feel that layer and you let it move through without judgment, without resistance, you complete a layer of that grieving.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Boy, that is a lot to take in. And it's wonderful to hear that. It occurs to me that that's a very different approach to life than mostly we have, which is to kind of tackle and get through something as quickly as possible, or to get rid of it, to push the grief away. So when I say get through it, it's more like get over it, then go through it, right? So it's to bypass it in some regard. And so much of, I know you didn't really identify with the idea of being a motivational speaker, but certainly a transformational teacher makes sense. But so much of that world of self-improvement is about taking control, taking charge, being in the place, not to surrender, but to overcome or push through. And of course, thinking of the idea of surrender, there certainly is a feeling or something that comes up maybe from the ego that to surrender is to give up, to surrender is to have in many ways failed at overcoming or at kind of taking control. So given all of those forces, internally, and I guess the other thing that really occurred to me is when life really happens, it is often something where we have to surrender in some big way. So it is when life really happens to us and there's really change or the opportunity for growth or just kind of surviving whatever's happening, it involves a death, a loss, a shift that we have to in some way accept and ultimately maybe surrender. So, often we wait for that big thing because we're kind of trying to be in control. And it's not until that big thing hits us that we are confronted with this. And what it makes me think of as you're speaking about surrender is that just like people have a gratitude practice, we should have a surrender practice in some way of the small things so that we're in a better place to, accept life in that energy when the bigger things happen. So, and I don't know if that's true, if you have that same thought, but if so, where would where do people start? Where would you suggest, or how does someone get into the mindset and energy of surrender just in any given day, and then start to build that part of themselves, or at least validate it? Because we are often very invalidated for those places, maybe where we quote unquote gave up, but maybe we did just, surrender something.
Or surrender is not giving up.
No,
it from a place of like, oh, just give up. No, that's not surrender, because sometimes real surrender is really feeling the deepest impulse of what's in your heart, feeling your deepest truth. I'm so glad you brought this up about even in self-help. And this is why I'm kind of excited about sort of reframing and providing a bigger context and paradigm, because even in self-help, so much of it is about control. Like, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? Set your goals. What do you want? But we don't realize that many times what we think we're wanting and the goals that we're setting is not what we really want. It's just a projection of what we thought we wanted based on who we thought we were. But if we're not in touch with who we really are, then what we really want is not going to be what we really want. It's just going to be a projection, an illusion of what we want. And many times the goals that we set, that we're trying to like manifest into the world and force onto the world, can be a projection of our past childhood wounds, conditioning. Daddy wasn't there, mommy wasn't around, I'm not really worthy. So if I can have that sexy body, if I can drive that Lamborghini, if I can have that big house, if I can have enough Instagram followers, if I can win the Oscars, if I can be famous, then I'm gonna be enough. And the goals become a sort of unconscious way of compensating for certain needs that weren't met, but we're not aware. And so many times we're trying to like force things to be that really aren't aligned, and then we don't really feel deeply, even if we achieve the goal, we don't feel deeply fulfilled. And so I just want to acknowledge, you can create from the level of the mind. You can create from the level of identity. You can create from the level of ego. This is what I want. I'm going to willpower my way through. But all I'm saying is usually it will either be freaking exhausting, burnout, stress, anxiety, and or at some point you'll realize it's limited. It is limited. It's good, but it's limited. That's all I'm saying. So the whole question, the shift from what do I want? What do I want? Limited ego, identity, I. The shift of a question, and I think people can start asking themselves, is what is it that wants me? What is it that is actually seeking? What is it that's seeking to express through me? How is it that life is seeking to manifest through me? What is the vision? What is the purpose? What is the book? What is the art? What is the project? What is the podcast? What is the message? What is the business? What is it that life is seeking to express through me? How is it that life wants to express and manifest through me? And then to take the time to feel, to attune, to listen to the deepest, not the mind, to the deepest impulse of our soul and how that is moving the internal guidance. Sometimes when the soul guides us, it's not a big, loud thing. It might be a gentle whisper. So I would say cultivate the space in your daily reality to listen to your body, to listen to where the energy is moving within you, to listen to where the energy of life is kind of leading you, and feel into that. So create the space, tune in, listen, and follow that, you know? And so what is it that life wants to manifest through me? When we truly open to that, I think we open to we unlimit life, and we open to a bigger, infinite possibility. We open to the infinite possibilities of life expressing itself through us. And I really believe when we truly surrender ourselves in that way, what life can do through us is way more, is way bigger than what we of our limited sense of self can do of our own self. But as human beings, we're constantly trying to control. We try to control, even in our meditation, we try to control our thoughts. We try to control our body in exercise. We try to control our energy, you know, in energy work. We try to control God in our prayers. We try to control our diet. We try to control our spouse. We try to control, you know, the weather. We try to control the president. We try to control our pet goldfish. We try to control everything, but it doesn't really work. If you look at some of the best things, I don't know about you guys, but some of the best things that have happened in your life, meeting the love of your life, meeting that person, that situation, maybe meeting each other, doing this. Like, I don't know if you guys plan to just, we're going to meet each other on this exact day. It just happened. You were living in tune, doing your best, showing up, do your best, but then something happened. And so all I'm saying is life is happening, life is unfolding. And so our job is to tune in to our deepest truth and live that deepest truth as authentically as we can. And when we feel that, then it's like catching a wave. Then we can align our thoughts, our intention, our feeling, our action, our marketing, our strategy, all of that stuff around what is authentic rather than what is inauthentic. And so here is my prayer. You talk about a surrender, gratitude practice. Here's my surrender practice. And I think people can do this in any moment in one's life. My surrender practice is simply in every situation, I simply intend or ask for or pray for, universe, I ask for the highest good. I ask for the highest good to be made manifest in this situation. It's the invocation of the highest good. So you can have an idea, you can have a vision, you can have a goal, an intention, hold it. Don't get attached to it, right? Because sometimes what we think something is really not what it is. It's just what we think it is. There's many times when I thought something was, but it really wasn't, you know? And so our mind can be limited. And so you can have the goal, you can have the intention, but don't get so attached to it that you're now not open to life's grace flowing through. When we get so attached, like it's got to be this person, this is gonna be the one, even if they're not the one, I'm gonna make them the one, right? Making something, trying to make something into something that it's not, doesn't make it so. It just gives us the illusion, but it doesn't make it so. And so when we can say, okay, I'm gonna go in this direction, I wanna manifest that goal, that feels authentic, but I'm not going to get attached. I'm going to give it 100%. I'm going to give everything I've got, and then surrender the rest, surrender the outcome. And then simultaneously say, universe, I invoke, I ask for this or something better. I ask for the highest good. Whatever's the highest good in this situation. I ask for I don't know what this relationship is with this person. I would like to marry them. I'd like for them to be the one, but I ask for the highest good to be revealed. And I think when we put our attention on the highest good, which we are not able to necessarily know with our limited minds. We can't see the entire picture from our limited perspective of our identity. Then we are open to grace. We're open to the magic. We're open to infinite expression, you know. So the highest good, that's my prayer. Then I trust whatever, so long as I give everything and I give 100%, and I do my part, I can surrender in knowing that because I gave everything and I did my part, then what truly shows up and what the outcome ends up being, because my intention is on the highest good, is going to be my highest good, and trusting that. So a constant sort of invoking of the highest good. And then I would just say, just finding ways to, you know, for everyone to look in your life. This might be a little scary, but I think it's a practical thing. Yeah. Is I think one of the things that blocks us from surrendering or letting go are all the ways we lie to ourselves. In so many ways, we don't tell the truth to ourselves about who we are, about what we feel, about what we want. Maybe you're in a relationship that you know is not aligned, but you compromise and you stay in it because it's comfortable. Maybe you're working a job that you know that this is not the reason for why you were put on the planet, but you stay in this for 27 years because it's familiar and you get paid and it's you know, it's easy, but you know deep down, this is not why you were born. And so to surrender may be not leaving your job initially, right? Some drastic thing where you have to get freaked out, but to surrender might be just taking a step and saying, owning the truth and acknowledging to yourself, I'm not happy doing what I'm doing. The truth is, I'm not happy in my job. That's what's honest. No more excuses, no judgment, no justification, no arguing. I don't have to take action. I'm just going to start by acknowledging the truth of what I feel. So you can ask yourself a couple of questions. What lies am I telling myself? What am I pretending to not know? Because sometimes we play this game of confusion. You know, I don't know, I'm not sure. Deep down, we have a sense. And then what are the lies I'm telling myself costing me? You know, because I think when we're not living in alignment, when we're not living our truth in flow, authentically, there's usually some pain there. And to me, pain is a signal. Pain isn't bad. Pain is the energy. Pain is a signal that we're off in some way. We're not truly aligned in some way. And if we can then use the pain, not as something bad, we tend to, you know, distract from the pain in so many ways. Smoke it away, drink it away, shop it away, social media away, Netflix it away, so we don't have to feel the pain. But if we can use the pain as a way to recalibrate our focus, our energy to go, where am I not living in alignment? What am I denying? What am I not being honest about? Where am I not living in my own integrity, and bring ourselves back into that? And so those are a couple of things.
Yeah, that's quite a few things there. And, you know, there's a couple of things in that stand out to me. And the thought that occurs to me as you so eloquently describe that process is that in that shift to surrender, say from control and going after and getting, that it internally really is a shift from trying to get something in the world or from the world to kind of connecting with what it is you might be here to become in the world. It's a shift from an external getting to an internal becoming, which is a very different energy and much more fulfilling when you become the thing that expresses who you truly are, that validates the inner kind of authentic self and makes it kind of safe to share that or show that in the world. Oftentimes we're trying to get something to then feel, like you say, worthy or valid enough or whatever it is, to then maybe, then I can show who I really am, or then I can show up and be vulnerable in the world because I have everything. I've gotten everything. I've succeeded. I've won. Where surrender is that moment where it sounds like, from, you know, listening to you, where you shift the focus away from that or away from needing anything else to become in the moment who you are, or to align with that and start to kind of create or put that forth into the world. Does that sound kind of right? Like how you're...
Yeah, I think surrender is a shift, because when you truly surrender, it's less about outcomes. You become more focused on, this open-hearted participation that I mentioned earlier. It's like to participate with what's happening with an open heart requires two things. First thing, an understanding, at least from my perspective, my experience, that the universe is always working for your highest good, even if you're not able to see it right now. Sometimes we're in moments and things don't work out according to plan or how we wanted, or we didn't achieve the success or the goal. And we judge it as a failure, but ultimately ego sees it as a failure because it doesn't see how it interconnects to the entire tapestry of the totality of our destiny. So if we really understand the universe is working for our highest good, and so this or something better, then in a moment when things don't work out, we don't succeed, we can step back and get curious. Like, okay, what could this mean? What has the universe got up its sleeve? You know, what better thing could be seeking to show up? And so it moves from success or failure to curiosity. And the second thing too is a shift in surrender. Speaking to what you spoke about, I think when we realize that we are souls, we're souls that incarnate into this human experience, into these physical bodies, and life is really the classroom for our soul's evolution. Life is the classroom for our soul's growth. Life is a university in every single situation, relationship, dynamic experience is really the curriculum for us to learn, grow, and evolve, find out more about who we really are, and reveal, tap into revealing more of our true nature. And if we really understand that life is a classroom, life then is about evolution. And so then I think we're able to shift our perspective from let's say a one-dimensional view of success. Success in our culture often judged as achievement of an outcome, achievement of a goal, how long you stay in a relationship. Oh, you stayed together forever, you're successful, even though you were miserable and unhappy and you weren't growing and stagnant, but you stayed together, that's success. To me, real success is not about the surface one-dimensional goal line. Real success is about the soul line. And so I think when we look at things holistically, holistically, is that a word?
It is a word now.
I think you just coined a cool word.
You just made a cool word up.
Soulfully, solarly, you get what I'm saying, right?
Holistically.
When we look at
Holistically, I
things
love it.
from the perspective of the soul, then even if a situation is difficult, you know, even if the situation is challenging, even if a situation is beating you down, it's like, this is kicking my ass. But I think if we really get, the purpose of life is evolution of my consciousness. It's about the evolution. That's why we are here, to evolve. We really get that, then it doesn't matter so much what happens or what doesn't happen, what happens or doesn't happen at this level of the story. What happens is more how we participate in the process so that we can then roll our sleeves up, even in a difficult situation, to learn, to evolve, to grow. And then we start asking ourselves the question, rather than feeling like a failure, like it didn't work out, or the relationship ended, I'm screwed up, it ended. It becomes more about, why did my soul attract this dynamic? Why did my soul attract this situation? What was my soul seeking to learn in this complex, challenging dynamic where I was betrayed and this happened? What was my soul seeking to learn in this curriculum, in this experience? And I think so long as we learn the lessons, no matter what happens on the surface, we learn the lessons, we grow, and we become more of who we truly are, we win. That's success. And so I think when we can view it from that point, then it allows us to surrender to the experience of what's happening and not get caught up in success or failure from a traditional sense, but constantly be on a path of growth and evolution. So surrendering to the lesson, surrendering to the growth.
And you said one more follow up on that, and then David may have some questions, but you said something earlier that really stood out to me that is a part of this whole growth mindset, perhaps, and the being in that connected to the soul and growing here, becoming something more as we move along, not goal oriented, but as things emerge.
Yes.
Is that where you were able to take something like regret and make it sacred and use it to inform you moving forward, where often where so many of us get stuck is we take what are perceived failures of the past and we use them against ourselves. We use them to punish ourselves. We use them to even lie to ourselves and say, this is why I can't or don't have what have you, and to take the lessons of the past and the negativity that we maybe were kind of looking back, that we see where we did something maybe that didn't live up to the soul's frequency or to our highest ideal for ourselves, and rather than use it against ourselves, to somehow make that a sacred awareness that we use moving forward. And that's just, that really stood out to me when you were talking about that, and how you as a transformational teacher, you have to be continually growing and transforming yourself. It's not a body of knowledge that you gain and then now I'm going to tell everybody the way it is. It's where you're becoming this thing, you're growing and you're sharing that with the world, I think. I mean, that's my take on it. That's my feel about it. But yeah.
Cool.
And Kute, I saw you once speaking about reading J. Krishnamurti.
Oh yeah.
And I lived in India as well. I spent some time there. I love it. I've heard you speak a lot about India and how you would take clients there and strip everything away from them and make them really experience life. Maybe there's no better place in the world than India to do that. India
is about surrender.
It truly is. When I first got to India, they told me, when you get off the plane, either laugh or cry, but make a decision, because if you fight it, it'll hurt, because it's chaotic, it's loud, there's things don't make sense, and if you want that Western structure, you are going to suffer. And I remember that incredible lesson I learned there. But going back to J. Krishnamurti, I went to visit the Theosophical Society in South India, where I believe he grew up, and where there was a group of, kind of mystics in the early 20th century, late 19th, early 20th century, who they proselytized, they had this like prophecy that one day J. Krishnamurti would be born and he would be the kind of, avatar of the world and change the planet. And they brought him up in that way. And then one day he had to say, hey guys, that's your vision. And they were like, wait, what? No, this is the vision for the world. And he went his own direction. He still became an incredible spiritual teacher. He did change the world. And there's some parallels, I think, between your life and his, in the sense that you started teaching at 8. Your dad was this huge, spiritual teacher, and he was handing you the mantle, and you said, I'm going to America. Or
I started speaking at 8. 14. He announces to the congregation, my son is taking over my whole spiritual, organization. We're talking
without asking,
hundreds of thousands of followers, like a huge thing in Africa. I mean, my dad was the guy that people would pick up the sand that he walked on and stand up from being crippled for years. Or he, like you've been to India, so you understand, like a siddha. He was a siddha yogi, like in the framework of like Sai Baba or Muktananda. I mean, that was, Shaktipat. People be flying across the room, every Sunday, boom, bam, boom, wigging. I mean, all these things happening. And so people standing up at wheelchairs who hadn't walked, he'd touch them, and people who were blind, he'd touch them and they would see. It was like, to be honest, I was going to say it's crazy, but it was normal to me growing up, honestly. It wasn't actually, it's crazier when I think about it now, because I have an appreciation for maybe how rare that is, but that's all I knew. And so, when I was 14, he just announced to everyone, my son's taking over. And I looked at him and looked at my mother on stage and was wondering, I guess I am, huh? And so my life was set out for me, but I didn't leave right away. It took me 4 years. I went along with it. See, my fear was, if I dare to be who I am, if I dare to speak my truth, if I dare to express my voice, if I dare to surrender to what I really feel, then I'm going to be, my relationship with him will be over. I'm going to be outcast. I'll be alone. I'll be abandoned. I mean, all of the, like, my life is finished. And so for 4 years, I said nothing, meditated, cried, prayed, confused, still did my life. That's when I started reading Krishnamurti at 14. And that's when I read Krishnamurti's life and I felt the parallel with mine, I thought the seed was planted, and I knew it was a matter of time. but it took me 4 years to really muster up. I think I was about 17, to really muster up the courage to have the conversation with my father. But I had to surrender my need to be liked. I had to surrender, my fears of what would happen. I had to surrender my relationship with my father, because I realized if I followed the expected path for my life and became successful by following that path, number one, if I don't have myself, what do I have? And then if I do follow, so what kind of success is that? But then if I do follow the expected path, being what people want me to be, then I'm going to have to spend the rest of my life continuing to live this lie and be what I think people want me to be in order to continue that lie. And the reality hit me of thinking, that sounds like hell. If it was so painful to feel that. And so one day I honestly wept and I cried and I grieved and I inside of myself said goodbye to my father. And it wasn't just an overnight process, but I really made peace with that and had the conversation with my father. And it was the scariest moment of my life up until that moment. I crawled up the stairs and, looked this African, strong, powerful man in the eyes. And I said, Dad, I love you, but I don't think I can take over the churches. It was kind of like that.
Yeah.
And he didn't say anything. We didn't speak for 2 years. And it killed me because I knew that I was going to have to own myself. And I was going to have to maybe break my father's heart in order to own myself. And that was painful, but I did it. And I really believe that when you follow your deepest truth, when you follow your soul, it doesn't always make sense to the mind. It's often not convenient, but I really in my heart believe when you follow your soul, you will always be guided to the right destination. It may not take you the route or the road that you thought, but you will always be guided to the right destination. And sometimes we shy away from following our soul and making the choice that we know deep down in our soul, we know we need to make. And so we sometimes take the easy path, but you can't cheat life. I always tell people spiritually, if you take the easy path, and don't go through that situation, don't go through that lesson, you don't get to graduate to the next level of your life. Life is a series of evolution. Life is a series of lessons. Life is a classroom, and all lessons are repeated until learned. And so when we don't learn the lesson, like had I not learned that lesson, I felt like it was a graduation exam. Had I not learned that lesson, I would probably be stuck in some, blocked situation and definitely not doing what I'm doing now. And so when we do what's easy now, it's often harder later. When we do what's harder and authentic now, I found it gets easier later. Yeah. And so I think it's so important. Like surrender is to trust the truth, the deepest truth that you feel. What's funny, I was talking to someone the other day, is we often trust Siri. Siri? Anyone know?
Yes.
We often trust Siri more than we trust our soul. I'm like, wait a second. Siri says turn left. We don't even question. We turn left. Siri says turn right. We don't even flinch. We just turn right. Siri says drive over the bridge. We just drive. Our soul says write that book. Wait a second. I don't know. Really? I don't know if I'm capable. I'm not sure. Soul is guiding us, but we're questioning. And so I think we get to trust bigger than our minds. If anyone's wondering, well, how do I trust? I mean, I think, how can we? Okay, I actually think it's harder to not surrender than to surrender. Mm-hmm. It's actually more painful and harder to not surrender and live life hiding, live life playing small, live life inauthentic, live life with knowing that there's so much you want to give and live the pain of that than to surrender. I think it's harder, right? But we don't trust that things are going to work out. So I would say, let's take it out of the woo-woo or the mystical or the spiritual for a moment. Let's just get biological and grounded. Just look at your body. Let's just get real base. If you just look at your body, like we've been sitting here having this beautiful conversation, and here we are. You're breathing, you guys are breathing, I'm breathing, folks listening in. Breath is happening. We're not sitting here going, oh shit, I've got to do some special super duper, technique to just make my body breathe. It's just happening in spite of us. We're not doing anything. The breath is just unfolding. We're being breathed by life and intelligence. You cut your finger. You don't have to be spiritual. You don't have to be into meditation. You don't have to care about yoga. You don't even have to be a good person. You could be Pablo Escobar, El Chapo. It doesn't matter. Cut your finger. The innate intelligence inside of your body will heal, knows exactly how to bring you back into harmony. How do we not trust? Don't trust something out invisible. Just tune into the body. Trust that. There's trillions and trillions of processes and cells interacting and manufacturing chemicals and digestion and eyesight and all sorts of processes happening inside of the body without without us doing anything. It's just unfolding. So I would just tell everyone, tune into your body. Just feel that. Get into relationship with that. Get curious, because if you just, like, when I just spend 5 minutes tuning into my body, it's like, wow, it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. Like, how can we not trust this organism? It's proof. Like, every breath to me is proof that something bigger than us is going on. I've never looked out at 10 a.m. in the morning and it was pitch black. Come outside 10 a.m. for a walk, pitch black, dark, like the sun just forgot to shine. It fell asleep this morning and it forgot to come out. Never happened. Every morning the sun rises and the moon shines, the trees and the seasons. To me, the same intelligence that's living you and living me and living all of existence and living us and living 8 billion people, living every dimension of reality, the same intelligence that is functioning you. And I feel this life force has an intelligence and knows, if we're willing to kind of surrender and get ourselves out of the way, it knows, just like it knows how to heal the cut in your finger, it knows how to fulfill itself through us, if we're willing to trust a little more than our holding on in our minds.
That is such a deep story of how you got here, because at such a young age, that is like choosing your path over the path that was given to you. And in that path, you would be given tremendous power that you had to, in a way, reject. And I'm curious, because beyond the surrendering, when you went to speak to your father, did you feel 100% certain and powerful, or was it scary and you just had to trust and do it regardless? Because I think so many of us, we might see that path inwardly, and then we kind of think we have to wait until we feel the power, or we feel certain, or we feel self-assured enough about ourselves to take the step, versus in the midst of the fear and uncertainty, still do what's right. Like, how was your process? Finding a father to me is huge. I mean, I totally resonate with that. Yeah.
Look, I felt, this is why I just encourage everyone to feel the energy, feel where the wave is moving, feel where life is leading you. And sometimes it's very subtle, but if you feel where the energy and the movement of life is going, it's like, I want it to go here, but it's kind of, the energy is flowing here. But it's flowing here, And so one of the things we have to give up is the constant need to understand everything. The mind has that's one of the ways we try to control and protect and self-preservation. We have to understand everything. What does this mean? Where's this going? And where's this not? To really then be able to embrace, like, the unknown, I think the degree to which we can embrace the unknown is freedom. But here's the thing, even when we think we know where we're going, many times I thought I knew where I was going and it turned out somewhere totally different. So what the hell do we really know? You know, it's just the illusion of knowing that provides the illusion of security. So when I spoke to my father, all I knew in my heart was I was called to this path. I didn't know where that was going. All I knew, and I couldn't deny it. Sure, I could bullshit myself. I could pretend, I could play games. But if I was really honest, the energy is moving me here. And I think we have to start getting comfortable with following the energy. Rather than us leading life and projecting is to allow ourselves to be led by life. And I felt life leading me here. And I looked down that pathway and I saw nothing. All I knew was, look, the only clue I had was when I was a kid, I read probably 700-800 books from age 8 to 18 in self-help. And some of those people were Eastern mystics like Krishnamurti, but some of those were Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, Louise Hay, Dan Millman, Marianne Williamson, some of these Western, Wayne Dyer, these Western folks. And so all I knew was I wanted to come to America. I felt a calling to come to Southern California because most of these authors lived in Southern California. And so I wanted to come and meet them. And because that was the field I wanted to go into, this was the Mecca. This was the place to be. That's all I knew. Like, I have to go there. That's it. So I didn't know how I was going to get there. Didn't know when, didn't know, no support, didn't come from a wealthy family, nothing. So when I spoke to my father, I had this knowing of an essence, of an energy, but I was terrified. And so the idea that you have to have no fear and be fearless, to me, is an illusion. I was terrified. I was shaking. I was terrified. And I think that in life, if you go through life and you're not a little bit like, should we say afraid, a little bit, you know, it's different from when a tiger's chasing you. But if you go through life and you're like, yeah, I got all the shit figured out, everything's cool, I'm the bomb, I'm a mate, you're probably, your vision and dreams are probably a little too small, and probably you're playing too small, because if you're really following your soul's guidance, your soul cares about your evolution, and it will take you and guide you to places that force you to expand beyond your current awareness, beyond your current self, beyond your current comfort zone, because that's what's going to make you evolve. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have any fear, don't get too cozy there. Like, you're probably playing too small. And so I was terrified, but I didn't let that stop me. You know, I just took a step. And I really feel when we really follow our authentic soul, that's when we're in flow. You don't have to know where the flow is going, and you don't have to know where you're going to get to exactly where you need to be. There is an intelligence that knows. And when we follow that flow, that's when I think the magic happens and things start happening that you as an individual identity, ego, personality, or doer, you didn't do and you didn't make happen. It's life that is manifesting. You're no longer the doer in the occasion. Life is doing it. Life is doing what it needs to do. And the dream that you have, the vision that you have, the goal that you have, which is arising from somewhere deeper, is encoded with its own intelligence. And that dream belongs to life. If that dream belongs to life, then you are simply the vehicle through which life is seeking to manifest itself through. And if it really belongs to life in a deeper expression, then our job is to get ourselves out of the way and trust that if this belongs to life, then life knows how to fulfill itself. So let's just show up. Let's just show up and trust and allow. And that's when I won a green card. I won a green card in the lottery.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The green card lottery.
That's
awesome.
Very difficult to win.
It's almost, I've only met maybe in 20 years, 2 people that have actually won it and got it. It's one thing to win it, and then it's another thing to go through the interviews to get it in your hand. And look, for instance, I felt the calling. My father's not speaking to me. And I said, universe, you have given me this calling. You got to show up for me here. Like I'm following my guidance. I don't see the light. I don't see the way. I have no idea where I'm going. Something told me.
Yeah.
I think we have to be following the clues. Something said, go to the library in my school. I went to the library, kid you not. Someone hands me a magazine called The Economist. Says, hey, you should check this out. A clue. Life is giving clues. I'm flipping through the magazine, getting curious. I look at the back of the magazine, says the American government's giving away 55,000 green cards in the green card lottery. I felt chills. That was a sign. I had a strange sense I was going to win. And on the last day, it was a 3-month process. On the last day, I was notified, and it just, cut a long story short, came to the US. And
amazing.
But that was proof that when we follow the flow and we follow what's true, I think nature rises to support us. The universe rises to support us in ways that we could never have planned and manufactured with our minds.
Yeah. To go back to the woo-woo, when you choose your path, truly, when you get that deep connection of what your path is and choose it, things fall into place to help it happen. You're supported.
Yeah.
And I think it is a wonderful thing to remember in the spiritual growth world, and you mentioned this just a minute ago, that growth really happens just outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
But just inside the panic zone. So you can't push yourself to where you're in panic, because then survival takes over. But you can't rest in comfort and experience transformation and growth. So
thanks
it's
for
important
that.
thing to remember.
Yeah, that's a great point, Cody. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks.
I'm sure me and Cody can continue asking questions all afternoon because you have nothing to do.
No, of course. Well,
hang out with us.
Hang out with us. What better thing to do is there?
Amazing.
Your life purpose.
We're having fun.
Right here unfolding. Well, even though you're not a motivational speaker, you're incredibly motivational. Your enthusiasm is infectious. Clearly, you've lived a life path that is so in alignment, and it's beautiful to watch and feel speaking with you. And I could see it coming through the book as well. So for everyone listening who wants to read it and get another hit of that Shakti, where can they get it? Where can they find you?
You know what was funny? This title was not the title I thought. When this title came through, The Magic of Surrender, I was like, nah, it's got to be much more different. It's got to be catchy. It's got to be, Who Moved My Cheese? It's got to be. No, The Magic of Surrender. Then the publisher sent me this book cover, right? In a PDF, in an email. I was like, hell no, I hate it. And then I sat with it, meditated on it. That's it. That's the cover. Then when I finally got the book in my hands and I saw it here, I was like, this is the cover. And so it just goes to show, sometimes life works out better than you can even plan. And so, yes, if anyone wants to get the book, they can go to www.themagicofsurrender.com. It's available on Amazon, but if they also go there, they can get a bunch of free gifts. My website is kuteblackson.com, and check me out on Instagram and Facebook.
Beautiful. And you've got tons of great videos on YouTube as well.
Podcast as well. Yeah.
And podcasts also.
Yeah. Well, Kute, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you and to have you here. And thank you everyone for listening. Me and Cody are back, and this is the episode. Kute has inspired us to continue down our paths here, and wish you all the best. Love you. See you next time.